Hi, good evening. My name is Father Rayappa, and today I'm going to talk about Dandi Salt March. In my college days, I studied Indian history. I love Indian history. I think March, which was enacted by Mahatma Gandhi um, in March of 1930, defined our um, our nature of fighting for independence. Mahatma Gandhi, in silence, he remained in Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, and in the March 1930 early morning, 6 o'clock, he woke up, and there were about 78 followers, and they started to walk from Ahmedabad all the way to Dandi, the southwest coast of Gujarat, to protest the unjust law of salt tax. And actually, even today, we can defy any unnatural law. There are so many things in institutions and politics and religion. There are so many laws, they are not just. They're simply for the sake of the law, they enforce those laws, and we never question them. So I think it is up to us to question them, engage them, and then probably we can find some change, and we can change the destiny of our future. So anyway, I'm going to talk about Dandi March in detail. I've done extensive research on that, and I'm going to read a lot of quotes from Mahatma Gandhi's life, and also the historians, what they say about Dandi March. Actually, in all the stirring annals of our freedom movement, few events are as dramatic, inspiring, and significant as the historical Dandi March led by the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi. We don't remember many events, but few of them, they stand forever, and they come to haunt our attention. So that is one thing, is Dandi March. On one level, the march was intended. See, the march, it is a coincidence or what? The Dandi March was conducted in the month of March 1930. Was it coincidental or intentional? I don't know. Mahatma Gandhi, we never know. Month of March, Dandi March. On one level, the march was intended to protest against the nefarious provisions of the salt tax imposed by the British people. But there was another level that had deeper, more profound implications and gave the event a unique significance. The march, in effect, was the spark that ignited the flames of the freedom movement and caused the idea of mass civil disobedience to spread like wildfire across the nation. In December 1929, the Indian National Congress declared that total independence for India was its avowed objective, and to that effect, January 26, 1930 was celebrated as Independence Day throughout the country. Still, British people are ruling our country, you should remember, and India is celebrating the Independence Day. Okay? People everywhere enthusiastically pledged themselves to fight for Purna Swaraj. Purna Swaraj means full freedom. Against this background, Gandhiji, under the authority of the Congress, took the first step and launched the civil disobedience movement known as the Salt Satyagraha. Speaking on the eve of the march, on March 11th, the day before the march was to begin, the crowd swelled to 10,000 people when the evening prayers were held in Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad. At the end, Gandhiji delivered a memorable speech. He said, "In all probability, this will be my last speech to you in Ahmedabad. Even if the government allow me to march tomorrow morning, this will be my last speech on the sacred banks of the Sabarmati. Possibly, this may be the last words of my life here." Very moving words. Then came the next day, March 12th. Yes, the great march, which can be likened to Lord Buddha's Mahabhinishkramam, commenced from the ashram premises on the banks of the river Sabarmati, Ahmedabad, at 6:30 a.m. on March 12, 1930. Gandhiji, staff in hand, frail but full of energy, even at the age of 61, led the 78 Satyagrahis. This represented a cross section of the people from all over the country: Andhra, Bengal, Bihar, Bombay, Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, Kutch, Maharashtra, Punjab, Rajputana, Sindh, Tamil Nadu, UP, Utkal, and even Nepal. Besides Hindus, there were among them 2 Muslims and 1 Christian and 2 Harijans. A huge crowd followed the Satyagrahis, the roads for miles and miles having been watered and decorated with arches, flags, and toranas. Anyway, this salt taxation, who did it? British, of course. The 1882 Salt Act. That is the time it was enacted, 1882. That is almost 50 years before Dandi March. So almost half a century, the Salt March was prevailing in the pre-independent India. So 1882 Salt Act gave the British a monopoly on the collection and manufacture of salt, limiting its handling to government salt depots and levying a salt tax. Violation of the Salt Act was a criminal offense. Even though salt was freely available to those living on the coast, Indians were forced to purchase it from the colonial government. The Salt March, also known as the Dandi March and the Dandi Satyagraha, was an act of non-violent civil disobedience in colonial India, initiated by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi to produce salt from the sea water in the coastal village of Dandi, as was the practice of the local populace until British officials introduced taxation on salt production, deemed their sea salt reclamation activities illegal, and then repeatedly used force to stop it. Gandhi, who intended to walk 240 miles from Ahmedabad to Dandi, that is 390 kilometers, to the coastal village of Dandi, which was located at a small town called Navasari in the state of Gujarat. As Gandhi and the others continued on what would become the 24-day march to Dandi to produce salt without paying the tax, growing numbers of Indians joined them along the way. When Gandhi broke the salt laws at 6:30 a.m. on 6th April 1930, it sparked large-scale acts of civil disobedience against the British Raj, salt lost by millions of Indians. The campaign had a significant effect on changing world and British attitudes towards Indian sovereignty and self-rule, and caused large numbers of Indians to join the fight for the first time. The British establishment too was not disturbed by this plan of resistance against the salt tax. The Viceroy himself at the time, Lord Irwin, he was the Viceroy of India, he did not take the threat of a salt protest seriously. At the time he was writing to London, here is the quote, "At present, the prospect of a salt campaign does not keep me awake at night." So that was the attitude of the big viceroys at the time, and they didn't care. These are Indian, they're like mob. They didn't even consider Indians as humans. However, Gandhi had sound reasons for his decision. The salt tax was a deeply symbolic choice, since salt was used by nearly everyone in India to replace the salt lost by sweating in India's tropical climate. An item of daily use could resonate more with all classes of citizens than an abstract demand for greater political rights. The salt tax represented almost 8.2% of the British Raj tax revenue and hurt the poorest Indians the most significantly. Explaining his choice, Gandhi said, "Next to air and water, salt is perhaps the greatest necessity of life." The Salt Satyagraha, nicely put it, the campaign was based upon Gandhi's principles of non-violent protest called Satyagraha, which he loosely translated as truth force or truthful demand. Literally, it is formed from the Sanskrit word satya, which means truth, and agraha, which means insistence. The salt march to Dandi and the beating by British police of hundreds of non-violent protesters in Dharasana, that is another town in Gujarat, southern of Dandi, which received worldwide news coverage, demonstrated the effective use of civil disobedience as a technique for fighting social and political injustice. The Satyagraha teachings of Gandhi and the march to Dandi had a significant influence on American activists Martin Luther King Jr., James Bevel, and others during the movement for civil rights for blacks and other minority groups in the 1960s and 70s. The long 390-kilometer trek finally ended on April 5, 1930. Along the way, Gandhiji and his companions had broken journey for the night at 22 places. On April 6th, the atmosphere at Dandi was both tense and solemn. The day began with prayers. Gandhiji then nominated Sri Abbas Tayabji and after him Srimati Sarojini Naidu to lead the Satyagraha if he was arrested. After prayers, Gandhiji with his followers took a bath in the sea. Then at 8:30 a.m., he defied the salt law by picking up a lump of salt. Srimati Sarojini Naidu, who was there, hailed him as a lawbreaker. What is the aftermath of Dandi March? The nation defies the salt law everywhere. The first salvo of the battle was thus fired. Gandhiji, in a statement issued after breaking the salt law, declared, "Now that the technical or ceremonial breach of the salt law has been committed, it is now open to anyone who would take the risk of prosecution under the salt law to manufacture salt wherever he wishes, wherever it is convenient." The entire nation rose as a man against what Gandhiji described as Gunda Raj. Millions broke the salt law and courted imprisonment. Salt depots were raided everywhere, and the manufacture of illicit salt was undertaken. In a single raid at Dharasana, 289 volunteers were wounded because the police now used lathi charge and batons freely. Batons, they call it. Lathis and batons. They were using them freely on Indian people. But even the brutality of the mounted police failed to break the morale of the Indian people. At the same time, the breaking of other oppressive laws was also undertaken. Gandhiji moved on. Gandhiji declared to the nation the call of 1920 was a call for preparation. Today, it is a call for engaging in final conflict. He said in a message, at present India's self-respect, in fact, are all is symbolized, as it were, in a handful of salt in the Satyagrahi's hand. Let the first holding it, therefore, be broken, but let there be no voluntary surrender of the salt. At the time, Lord Irwin, he was the Governor General and the Viceroy of India. He ruled India 1926 to 1931. They are known as Lord Irwin. I wonder, same Lord, also we believe God, all these people, they are little gods anyway. So, God Irwin. So, as if there were not enough gods in India, and these British had to come and place some gods for Indians. For what? The Gandhi-Irwin Pact. So after Gandhi's Dandi March, many things have changed in British administration. And they called Gandhi to participate in the round table conference, and people of India, they get some attention from the British government, even from Churchill at the time, from the Queen, and from all parts of the world. India was watched carefully. So the Gandhi Lord Irwin Pact was a political agreement signed by Mahatma Gandhi and the then Viceroy of India, Lord Irwin, on 5th March 1931. That means 1 year after the Dandi March we are talking about, before the second round table conference in London. Below are the proposed conditions. Some of them, I want to read them for you from the second round table conference in London. Discontinuation of the civil disobedience movement by the Indian National Congress. So they shouldn't do civil disobedience anymore. The second one is participation by the Indian National Congress in the Round Table Conference. They gave place in London in the Round Table Conference. Withdrawal of all ordinances issued by the British government imposing curbs on the activities of the Indian National Congress. So they remove every charges against Indian National Congress. Withdrawal of all prosecutors relating to several types of offences except those involving violence. So all those charges brought to against the Congress activists, everything was removed. Okay, they are all cancelled. Release of prisoners arrested for participating in the civil disobedience movement. All those prisoners in the prison were released on unconditional ways. The last, removal of the tax on salt, which allowed the Indians to produce, trade, and sell salt legally and for their own private use. So that was the success. So there was no salt tax. It was cancelled. Indians can pick up salt wherever they want and they can make business out of it. And it is only between each Indian and the salt. There is no British people involved in the middle. Okay, so these are the great outcomes of Dandi March. So anyway, what a story, what a story. Thus ended a glorious episode in our freedom struggle. The spark that the Dandi March ignited soon kindled the flames of a movement that engulfed the entire nation and finally succeeded in achieving what Gandhiji, in essence, strove to accomplish at Dandi: total independence for the people of his beloved India. After the Dandi March, later, speaking about Dandi March, Gandhi once said, "My feeling is like that of the pilgrim to Amarnath or Badri or Kedarnath. For me, this is nothing less than a holy pilgrimage. Sri Motilal Nehru, drawing a historical parallel, said, like the historic march of Ramachandra in search of Sita to Sri Lanka, the march of Gandhi will be memorable. While Sri P.C. Ray compared it with the exodus of the Israelites under Moses. Wow, that's well said, P.C. Ray. The exodus of the Israel people under Moses. Mahatma Gandhi was the new Moses. Both of them start with M. Anyway, there are so many laws today should be denounced. So many in politics and in the state and in religions. Religions. That is the focus you should have. There are so many unjust laws. I think 1930 Mahatma Gandhi, already almost it's going to be 85 years, but we didn't learn any lessons. There are unjust laws in every institutions, and we need to denounce them. We need to do something about them. We shouldn't put burden on the future generations. Let them fix them. Let them worry about it. No. I mean, our ancestors, they didn't worry about so many things. That's why we are in this kind of condition. If our ancestors asked the question, if they have done everything, they could have cleared a path, a beautiful path of sustainable development right now. But they never questioned. They want to have a good name. They didn't want to spoil their own name. Even Mahatma Gandhi, one man, was fighting for the freedom, but other people were just making excuses. Even in his own family, probably. Some of them thought, why should he do this? Let other people do. Why should my father, my great-grandfather should go to jail and suffer? Why? And he gets a bad name in the newspapers and he is put in jail and everybody is laughing about him. So that is the way our ancestors are. Always they don't take responsibility. Mahatma Gandhi is one. With him there are some more associated. But that is a good thing. I think India, so many people, they never even question. They want only their good name. That is disgusting. That is disgusting. I think you wasted your birth as a human being. There is no glory in your life. And I think we need to open our eyes and see a lot of unjust practices going on in religions and also in institutions and in politics. We need to cleanse them, purge them, and we need to create a revolution. Let 1930 Dandi March be repeated in our human history and in our society. Thank you. Have a nice day.